Welcome to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I am your host. We are coming to you live from Radio Valencia, YouTube.com, Facebook, Twitter, Vietnam, Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, somewhere in San Francisco on 87.9 FM. We're coming to you from every corner of the globe. I'm here with my two favorite people in the whole wide world. I have Chaz and Robinson. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, gentlemen.
Robinson, you are in Viet freaking Nam right now.
Yeah.
Tell the people where you are.
I'm in a city called Da Nang, D-A-N-A-N-G.
You were there before.
Yeah, I was here about a month ago. Well, 2 months ago, maybe.
I do remember.
Yeah, I was staying at an Airbnb, which was in a house, or actually a villa, which is a house with a big fence around it and a big swimming pool and a guard at the gate, and like
Fancy.
Fancy house kind of thing. Here, I decided to stay in this hotel because a friend of mine has opened a Korean barbecue next door. He also lives in the penthouse of this hotel, and this hotel is called the Sea View Hotel. Here's one of their bottled water. They have their own labeled bottled water. It's not a very big hotel, but
The Sea
it's
View
nice.
Hotel.
It's nice.
So
Sea
let me
View
get this straight.
Hotel.
Let me get this straight. Your Korean friend or your
Yes.
Vietnamese friend has opened a Korean barbecue in Vietnam.
He is Korean,
He is Korean.
and he has moved here to open his barbecue. He doesn't even speak Vietnamese, just like
Got
me. He speaks English better than I speak Korean. So anyway, we hang out, we chat. He's really cool.
He speaks English better than I speak English.
And I met him last time I was here, and he told me about the barbecue, Korean barbecue, and upstairs is a mango smoothie cafe as well. So yesterday was the grand opening, and it wasn't really the grand opening, it was a soft opening. He's doing his grand opening.
Which means usually friends and family get to eat for free.
Yes. So yeah, and you know, for the owner and for the employees, just the time to work out all the little bugs before they have to open to the general public. So I think most of the customers there were Korean.
We know all about bugs on this show. So working out the bugs, that is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts at the Sober Happy Hour. So we will reintroduce to those that are just joining us. This is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast coming to you on Radio Valencia 87.9 FM in San Francisco, YouTube, and streaming live on radiovalencia.fm. So we are joined right now by Robinson from Vietnam. These kinds of things used to happen via satellite. Do you remember that? Via satellite, and then every once in a while, it would be all right. We appear to have lost the audio. We'll see if we can get him reconnected. All right, okay. And then of course we have Chaz, and Chaz, it's good to see you. How was your week?
My week was fine. It was rather uneventful, which I like. Lately, I like uneventful because eventful seems to be turbulent.
Aha.
But that's just where I live. That's just what I work.
Understood. And I am on board with that idea that a calm and uneventful week sometimes is the best kind of week. I myself have been experiencing a very interesting last couple of weeks in my professional life. It's been weird. Just a lot of weird stuff going on. A lot of For the first time in my career with the company that I work for, I've been sort of feeling this weird sense of politicking that didn't used to exist, and it's been a little strange. I'm gonna mute Robinson here because he's getting a little rubby-dubby on something.
Is there a new administration or something in your company?
We have managers and like general managers and district managers, like most businesses. You know, they have the different tiered levels of leadership, and my main boss left last week, and so in preparation for him leaving, I think people really kind of started to flex their muscles a little bit, and like in anticipation of the possibility of a spot opening up for them, and I don't know, just hasn't been the nicest of things lately, and it's just, I don't know, just one of those things where after a handful of years of not really having to experience the sort of lameness of typical corporate bureaucracy and you know, structure, to kind of get that vibe for the last few weeks, yeah, I don't know, just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Hopefully it goes away and goes back to normal, but we shall see. Make the best of it.
Well, I have something to say to you.
Sure.
I may have said this to you before, and this is a little piece of advice that someone gave me a long time ago, and it's very important, and it sticks with me all the time. He said, if there's someone that you have to deal with for business or, you know, something, work or whatever, and you just don't connect with them for some reason, you don't feel like you're going to get along, take him out to breakfast.
Breakfast.
Take him out to breakfast and have breakfast with him, and just don't talk about business. Just get to know him a little bit.
Where the fuck were you like a year ago?
Now, if at the end of breakfast you still don't like this person, wait a couple of days and take him out to lunch. Okay? Now, that's going to give you a little bit more time to get to know him a little bit better. At the end of that, if you still don't like him, take him to dinner. And if you don't like this guy after breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then you got to figure out what's wrong with you, okay? Because everybody's got good qualities in them, about them, and it's your job to find those good qualities and find that connection with that person.
I love it. That's very insightful. Can I be honest with you?
Yes.
I was expecting a punchline. I thought you were going to say, and if after you've taken this person out to dinner, if you still have not connected with them, then take them out back and shoot them in the head, because they're not.
That's another option, yeah.
I was expecting that, but I am intrigued by where this came from, and I would love to at some point in time hear of success stories that you have, employing this particular strategy. So, but the good news is the person who will be coming in to replace this boss type, I may very well have the opportunity to take your advice here in the next few weeks to a couple months, and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay. And Mr. Chaz,
well, yes,
from a technical perspective, if when you turn your head to your left, your microphone rubs on your shirt.
This thing?
Yep. And then it sounds like somebody has taken the microphone and perhaps stuck it somewhere fuzzy.
All right, so if I hold it like this and I can move my head and...
Yeah, see? There you go. You got it.
Okay, cool.
And Robinson, you have some dings happening that are extremely loud.
Oh, yes, I do.
They go bing! and then my ears go, ow. So,
okay.
All right. Well, I'm excited that you have a good Wi-Fi connection and that we're able to talk to you this time from Vietnam, because our topic this evening is going to be rather fun. I say fun because it's pretty messed up, and we're going to talk about stuff that I don't think any of us have a lot of experience with, but perhaps we've known people that have experience with. And we're going to get to ask questions and draw conclusions and make assumptions, and it'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to the topic. However, before we get into tonight's topic, I would like to make a couple of quick Sober Happy Hour announcements. And then, if you would be so kind, Robinson, I'd love to do the quintessential Robinson the World Traveler, great for radio, visual tour of your hotel room.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'll plug the hotel.
All right. So here's a couple of announcements. So announcement number one, I posted online because just in the last 5 or 6 days, we have seen like a 2 times increase in our traffic and our subscription and our download rate to the podcast. Don't know why. And the guy's honking for joy outside, but it's happened. I'm looking at our statistics, and I have no clue what our listenership looks like via Radio Valencia. I doubt that it's anything significant, but the podcast itself has seen this rapid increase in subscribers, which is awesome. And like I said, I don't know why. It could just be that word of mouth kind of starting to spread, and that was pretty exciting to me. So we have breached the 2,000 threshold,
Wow.
Which is pretty remarkable.
Is that 2,000
What?
subscribers?
Yes, 2,000
What?
listeners to the podcast.
Holy shitballs.
Right?
And cumsicles. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember it was like 3 or something.
I know. So the next bit of news was that this silly behind-the-scenes necessary for our broadcast to happen hangout broadcast that we do, which gets no live views because it's in the middle of the night, apparently gets enough views during the daytime. The recorded version gets viewed after the fact enough that Google reached out to the page, to our hangout page, and offered us a custom URL for the show. You can't request that.
Holy shit.
Google saying, hey, you have people that are following you that are interested in your stuff. We want to offer you a custom URL that you can use to point people directly to your show. So,
that's hardcore.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, right? So, unfortunately, I thought it was going to be cool enough to be like youtube.com/soberhappyhour, but that's not something that YouTube does. So the URL is a little complicated, but not really. It's youtube.com/C, the letter C for, I assume, custom, /Sober Happy Hour Radio Podcast. So it's a little long, but it's better than what it was, which was youtube.com/#2JK3/PHP./ whatever. So it's a little easier to remember now. So youtube.com/C/Sober Happy Hour Radio Podcast. And we can send people straight there, and it'll take them right to our recorded video streams. So I was thinking, Chaz always looks like he's in the lobby of like or like the living room of a model home or something.
It's my kitchen. I mean, my dining room.
I know. Well, I know. But Robinson typically, when he's at home, looks like he's in some like cool live-work loft or something, and then I look like I'm in a fucking closet. So I might try to clean this mess up a little bit eventually. But who knows? I don't know.
You could probably just hang a curtain behind you.
Exactly. Just put something on a rod and be done with it. But I did order one of those fancy microphone stands that you have, Robinson, the bendy kind. And I was thinking about Chaz because Chaz is the only one who doesn't have a proper mic setup, and maybe that's something that we could figure out for you, Chaz, because both audio quality-wise and then also it would be nice for the look of things, since people are watching this video stream, if all three of us had a microphone that we spoke into rather than the, little dangly white thing from your face.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just me trying to get more professional. So, Robinson, it's your turn.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready, we'd love to see how many outlets this hotel room has.
Oh yes. Okay. Well, let's go for the tour here.
All right. Hopefully this doesn't break his stream.
We'll start with the door.
Oh.
Okay. Because wait, I have to do something here. I have to disconnect my. Okay. I don't think I can turn the camera angle around.
That's all right. It looks.
Oh yes, I can. I can. All right. So.
Oh, cool.
Here's your typical hotel. Okay, I come up the stairs. There's an elevator here. So and on the first floor is the entrance. The second floor is like a little cafe, and then I come to my hotel room. And there's all the hotel rooms that I've been into so far have keys, but this one has a key card.
Cool. I bet you could use an Apple Watch to open that.
Probably. So you come in, and the first thing you do is you take your key card, and you put it in this little slot here, and it turns everything on.
Shut up!
Turns on all the lights, turns on all the air conditioning.
That's awesome.
And
then you don't lose your key card.
You can't. So when you leave, you can't leave the hotel room and have all the lights and air conditioning stay on.
Yep.
That's how they save electricity.
Right.
So
they don't have to reprint keys for assholes that keep forgetting them in the room.
And if you forget your key, then you have to go back to the hotel lobby and they slap your hands.
Yeah, right. So you always know where your key is.
So here's the hotel room. It's nice. It's a little messy because I've been sleeping on it. This room has 3 beds in it. And even though I'm only staying here for one night for $15 a night, what happened? Oh, so look at that. I put the key in my pocket and everything turned off. Okay. So let me take you to the window. Across the street here is so I don't have an ocean view because I'm on the second floor, but this is the main street of the downtown beach area.
Very cool.
Hotel, nice big high ceiling. It's got an air conditioning up here on the ceiling.
Mitsubishi.
Nice little refrigerator. Bathroom is really nice. Let me turn the bathroom light on here.
So it's not a bathtub / room? It's not a shower room this time?
It's actually it's the same as the other thing where you stand and it's got a shower that's behind glass. But it's very nice and it's very sexy and I like it.
I'm glad you're wearing pants.
I am wearing pants today. I
know. We saw you in the mirror, so I was,
Oh, okay. And there's there's also a nice basket of
High
snacks
quality.
and beer and stuff in the refrigerator, and they don't charge extra for any of that stuff.
Wow. So
Wait,
for
what happened? Let me
$15,
turn this around.
you get potentially you
Oh,
could have 3 people staying in that room for $15 US a night.
That's $5 each.
That's amazing.
No. Actually, the room is a $30 room.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got it for 15 because I'm friends with Mr. Haw, who is opening the barbecue next door.
Got it.
Mm. So
Either
normally
way.
be $30.
And I also rented
Oops.
for the 2 days that I'm going to be here.
You rented a what? What did you
We
rent?
didn't hear you.
Cycle.
I think you said a motorcycle.
Yep.
Yes.
Got it.
Did I lose connection or
Yeah,
something?
you're getting a little choppy right now for some reason.
Cutting in and out.
I'm eating my Oreo gift cookies here.
Excellent. I introduced my children to toffee peanuts today, and they'd never had them before, and they both enjoyed them very much. So, all right, thank you, Robinson, for the tour. I think we should make that a segment. If anyone is traveling while doing the broadcast, I think it should be a requirement that they do some sort of a tour of where they are staying.
That'd be cool.
Okay.
It'll be an ongoing running segment on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast.
Cool.
All right.
I didn't have a very good trip coming here, and I want to tell you guys, if any listeners ever think that it's going to be a good idea to save a couple bucks and take a train instead of flying in Vietnam, don't do it.
Ooh.
I sat for 20 hours on a train to get only halfway down the country, and the seats are all hard benches, and my fucking ass is killing me. And they overbooked the train, so there's about 15% of the people on the train have to stand or just. This is the hotel receptionist. Say hello. Is very nice and here all the time. He's one.
Uh-oh. I don't know that
Very
Robinson
good.
understands the concept of Wi-Fi.
No. Robinson, go back to your room.
Motor.
Poor guy.
Bringing up the luggage and everything.
He's famous now, that guy.
Yeah.
Connection.
Yeah, your connection is gone, my friend.
Go back upstairs.
No.
He got overzealous. Well, now we see motorcycles.
Now he's going back up.
All right.
Like in the lobby.
I was editing the show from last week that should have just posted, and it was funny because I had to edit out a lot of the sound from Robinson being out on the street. And it's funny because all you hear is like the little horns from the scooters. It sounded like the Roadrunner. And it was pretty funny.
That's awesome. So, what's the topic for tonight?
So the topic for tonight, which I don't know if Robinson can still hear us.
But you still haven't got to it yet.
Oh, I know. And we know Robinson's connection is bad when we see him eating rabbit.
And he's still in the lobby.
I don't think so. That must be an old picture. Oh, maybe not. It's live. There he is.
There.
He's back in his room.
Nope, that's still the lobby.
Or are you in the lobby?
See this little. Oh, I think my camera.
Oh wait, no, that's.
I got a nice little blister on my lip. from
Ah,
all the stress of last week.
that
But
sucks.
I wanted to. I got a better connection.
Okay.
Still good?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna try to walk out to the street and give you a picture of the Korean
No.
He's going to walk out to the street and try to give us a picture of the Korean barbecue, I think is what he was going to say.
Well, he was going to.
Now he looks like
Spent a lot of
an Instagram photo. One of those.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. We can kind of see it.
We can see him.
I saw it for a moment. Well, this is good radio. I see him
Yeah.
scratching his head. And I see his chin.
Mhm.
He looks like he's got a GoPro connected to his chest.
I know.
Well, we tried, Robinson. All right. Well, the topic for this evening will not be Korean barbecue.
Darn.
We tried. We did our best. But the topic for this evening is going to be something I think a little bit interesting. We got an email a while back from a listener who was interested in learning a little bit more about the drugs that we talk about people being addicted to. And I don't think that we're going to dive too deeply into too many different drugs, but I kind of tried to do a little bit of research and on the most common drugs that people find themselves addicted to, and I figured we could spend the time discussing what people may experience when they make the decision to get clean. A big part of recovery and sobriety is that initial step that everybody has to take that requires the physical act of stopping taking the substance. And certain drugs are much harder to quit than other drugs, and we always have and always will lump alcohol into that category of drugs. And I thought it would be interesting to spend the evening talking about what our listeners can expect from getting off of a handful of these drugs, or what they can expect if a friend or a loved one or a coworker or a family member is making the choice to get off of their drug of choice. Because relapse happens so often when people are not prepared for what is going to happen when they choose to give up their drug of choice. And the support system that people have, the friend, the family member, etc., it's so important that they understand what this person might be or will be going through so that they can be supportive. Because if you think it's just going to be some walk in the park for somebody to stop taking drugs that they've been taking every day or multiple times a day for months or years or decades, you've got another thing coming. And I think that the support system breaks down so often when the people around the addict don't fully comprehend what this person is going through, and they jump to conclusions, they have these overblown expectations, and then shit can get really tough, and then relapse occurs. So I wanted to spend some time talking about a handful of the most commonly abused drugs that people get off of, including alcohol, and what some of those withdrawal symptoms look like, feel like, are like.
And then we are live on the air. Welcome, YouTube. I don't think we have any viewers, but it doesn't matter.
What are we listening to, Robinson?
Oh, internet. We are
you could hear me? I thought I was off the air.
I can hear everything that you are doing right now. So I've muted him again. Robinson is always the one. Yeah. Robinson is always the one who likes to fiddle with things. He doesn't believe in the concept of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He believes in the concept of, hey, it's working. Let's break it.
He's showing us something.
I know he's showing us something because he may not realize that I've muted him. But the last thing I want to do is hear myself. That's just gross. So I figured we could spend the next 90 minutes having a conversation about a handful of different drugs and substances that people commonly get off of when they're choosing to get sober, and what that might be like for that person, some of the pitfalls, some of the concerns, and the best way that we, the support system for the addict, or you, the addict making that tough decision to get sober, can expect from getting off of this drug that you've spent so much time with. How's that sound, Chaz and Robinson?
Sounds swanky.
So when I brought up the idea of this topic to you, Chaz, you made a comment along the lines of, well, shit, I don't have experience with this at all.
F if I know.
Right. So if that being the case, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, do not hesitate, because that's how we're going to get the most out of this conversation, is to have a layperson, such as yourself, ask the questions, those curiosities. And I figure Robinson, I'm glad that he's involved, because Robinson very famously and very openly has imbibed upon many a substance in his life, and may have experience with either himself having those shitty feelings of coming off of a weekend-long drug binge, or has experienced what that looks like and feels like firsthand with a friend or a loved one coming off of the shit. So just so you know, Robinson, you are still muted. I know you haven't tried to say anything yet, but if you want to interject, just make sure you unmute yourself first. Can you hear us, Robinson? Yes? Excellent. So, let's get this party started.
No. Okay.
What?
Oh, I was just going to say Robinson's picture froze.
It didn't for me. I don't think so. Robinson, can you unmute yourself and make sure that we can still hear you?
Okay. Yeah.
He's just sitting very still.
I am in the process of inviting people to the show.
Got it. All right. Well, he is there. We can hear him. And we just wanted to make sure that you were still there, because I think you will be a significant part of this conversation.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I'm here. I'm with you.
All right. Here we go. I thought we would start at a good spot. One that I was actually very surprised by. Everybody knows the phenomenon that is the TV show Breaking Bad, the movie Spun that a lot of people have seen, and who was the guy in that movie Spun? It was that hipster guy from Rushmore, who also played drums in that Phantom Planet band. what was his name? I don't remember. I would remember. And he was also a musician. Oh, well. I'm not going to worry about that. So I figured I didn't mute Robinson. He muted himself. The drug methamphetamine, also known as tweak, speed, crystal meth, is a drug that interacts directly with the dopamine receptors in your brain. And
crank. Sure, not crank.
Crank, good, yes, excellent. And I probably will regret even talking about this, but hey, this is a show of open honesty. I only remember by accident having been involved in a methamphetamine experience one time, and it was by mistake. I was on a road trip, and we were driving, and I was handed a cup of coffee. And it was the middle of the night. We were driving from Southern California to Northern California, and it was late. I was tired, and my co-pilot...
Was that with me?
Well, I wasn't going to call you out for it, Robinson. I was trying to keep you under wraps.
I have no secrets. No secrets at all, because this is one of my things. If I'm on a road trip, I put a little bit of something in my coffee to keep me awake.
Right. So,
and
I don't remember if I knew that this was happening. I assume I must have known, because Robinson's definitely not the type of person to, like, sneak something in your beverage. That's pretty fucked up, and he wouldn't do that. So I'm pretty sure I was aware of it. I maybe just didn't care at the time. And so I have a very, very small little bit of experience with this particular substance. And this was a long time ago. But what I do remember is not really feeling much of anything in terms of, the kind of...
Physical body high.
Right, you don't feel it like you feel marijuana or taking opiates or something like that. But what I do remember is that I was very awake and very alert, and Robinson and I had made the agreement with each other that we were going to split the driving. I would do the first half and he would do the second half. And we stopped for this cup of coffee really early on in the trip. And what I remember from the experience was kind of two main things. Number one, we got to Hayward, which is only about 20 minutes from our final destination, when I finally realized that, God damn it, Robinson, it's your turn to drive. And which was really funny, because that was like 8 hours into the trip. And I had just
We were already in Oakland by that point.
Yeah, I was white-knuckling it there the whole time without stopping. And I remember the constant changing of the CD and song. Like, I couldn't get through one song without getting bored. And I would just immediately, like we'd listen to the first minute of the song, and I'd be like, all right, new song. All right, we start the new song. All right, I'm ready for another song now. And there was just like this 8-hour constant changing of the song every 60 seconds. And then finally either something changed, like biochemically, where I was like, all right, I'm ready to not drive anymore, but the trip was over. And then we had to work the next morning. And we worked together at the time, but I wasn't going to bed. There was no way I was going to sleep, so I stayed up all night long just on the computer. And then we went to work the next morning, and then that night I slept from like 9 p.m. until like for 18 hours. That was my experience with this particular drug. Not bad, not good, more or less sort of nothing. But I certainly didn't smoke anything. I certainly didn't snort anything, and I certainly didn't take a lot. So I could only imagine like those 72-hour, meth binges that people take it and they're like up for 3 days doing all kinds of crazy shit, because this was a very, very small amount, and I mean it really kicked my ass, and I was up for 24 hours at least. So it affects the dopamine receptors, and what'll happen over time if somebody's using methamphetamine for a long period of time is your dopamine levels that are crazy high during usage, it will actually reduce the number of available dopamine receptors in your brain. So if you stop taking the drug, your body can't either. I couldn't fully grasp whether your body slows down the production of dopamine naturally, or if the receptors stay bound, and so dopamine does not get absorbed the same way that it would normally.
Well, speaking like in a as far as neurochemistry goes, because dopamine's a neurotransmitter, if it works the same way as things like serotonin and norepinephrine, then probably what's happening, and again, I'm just totally not a professional, this is just pure guesswork based on what I know about my own shit, is that such high concentrated, like such high bursts of dopamine, it's almost like it ratchets up the threshold for how much dopamine is necessary in order to get across that synapse. So in other words, it would keep taking more and more and more dopamine to produce whatever the normal dopaminergic response was.
And I think that's kind of based on what I was reading, is it has something to do with the availability of the receptors when you're taking this for a prolonged amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so because the receptors have become unavailable, it takes time for those receptors to become available again. I don't think they go away. I don't think they die. I don't think anything crazy like that happens, but that's why you need more to get the same effect out of it. So,
yeah, and those receptors are the things that are on the other side of that barrier between synapses.
So when you quit, if you are a long-time hardcore meth user, when you quit using meth, the most basic explanation for what happens is that because dopamine is directly connected to the pleasure response, the reward system of the brain, you essentially go to a place where you're no longer able to experience pleasure and thereby the feeling of happiness until you go back to normal. What's crazy about this is that with methamphetamine specifically, it can take for a long-time meth user who's coming off of meth, it can take up to 2 years before your brain is fully back to normal from this. So I don't know how to pronounce this word, but in the medical world, this is referred to as the anhedonia state.
Anhedonia.
Say it again.
Anhedonia means,
yes,
like if you think of the word hedonism, Hedon, and an meaning non, and hedon, so anhedonia.
So anhedonia state, this state is the #1 reason for relapse in meth addicts, because they feel nothing. And because they feel nothing and they don't feel like themselves, they want to take it to feel something again. And so relapse can occur. And because this can take up to 2 years, that desire to feel something again I would imagine would be pretty strong. Thoughts?
Well, it's also the same. Anhedonia is probably, I guess you could say, the biggest symptom in depression is that not feeling anything. Same thing with bipolar. There are times when there's a difference between feeling balanced and feeling flat. And feeling flat is when you don't feel anything at all. And to me, that is probably one of the most horrid things possible, because you realize it and you're like, I can't feel anything. I can't feel. And so you immediately know why people would take, these drugs in order to get that back. So essentially what this is doing, what
We're muting you again, Robinson.
What prolonged meth use does is it basically creates that exact chemical mess up that goes on with depression. And so that makes it, no wonder that people take, drugs and everything else that affect dopamine to self-medicate.
Understood. Do you have any thoughts, Robinson?
Yes, I have a visual. If you look at a sine wave, and for those of you who don't know what a sine wave is, you can take a piece of paper and draw a line across the middle of it, and then a squiggly line that goes up and down across the line, just kind of up and down. Above, the arch above it is called the sine, and the arch below it is called the cosine. So that is like anything like sound or electricity, it goes in waves, okay? Same thing with human nature. We have good times, we have bad times. When we have good times, our sine wave is up, and when we have bad times or troubles or whatever, our sine wave is down, and or manic and depressed, whatever. My point to this is there's a high limit and a low limit, and if you have a scale of like between 0 being the center, 50 being super ecstatic, happy, high, and 50 negative, or negative 50 being super low, depressed, and want to kill yourself, and then you find yourself a drug. Well, when you have this drug, your center line is what's really getting off kilter.
Yep. Yep.
So when you take this drug, you don't go to 50, you go to 100. Mm-hmm. And then when you come down off the drug, when you're on 100 for so long, and then you come back down to 50, your brain thinks that 50 is 0.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually back to normal, but you don't know it. And that's what's confusing to your brain. And your brain doesn't know that you're at a normal, everyday, happy high, not a super high. So your brain starts trying to produce things to make you high again, or to compensate for this weird balance. So that's why it takes so long for your brain to figure out that where that 0 is. You're throwing your media line completely off kilter. And it's not even a brain thing. It's not so much a chemical thing as it is just like a conscious thing. It's your mind, because we have our consciousness and we have our subconscious, and our subconscious gets thrown off. And that's kind of one of those things that you have to expect to deal with if you're going to get high, that center point is going to be blown out of proportion. Well,
and I think that's
why when I do drugs, I don't do it for more than a couple of days at a time. Just give myself a chance to keep so I can know where my balance is. That's an important thing for.
It's kind of it's like in that movie Inception. They have a totem so
Great
that
example.
they know what reality is. And
well, also it's a good example. Right. Like, in other words, they did it so long, the only way they could dream is by using that machine.
Right. So
that's like that great analogy.
The withdrawal symptoms, thankfully, for methamphetamine are physically pretty mild. When you come off of it, your body wants to sleep. Typically, you're sleep deprived, and you're also food deprived. Most people aren't eating; they're not consuming. Their caloric intake is way down, and their sleep pattern is way screwed up. And for some people, they're not sleeping for long periods at a time. So most people that are coming off of methamphetamine binge or a long-term methamphetamine addiction are going to sleep a lot. And they're going to start after a few days, or in bad cases after a couple of weeks, they're going to start eating a lot too. And another serious relapse risk, especially for women, is weight gain. So when they start gaining weight back because their metabolism is all screwed up, and they start gaining that weight, taking the methamphetamine to reduce their appetite, for some people, especially people that may be suffering with other psychological problems and they have body image issues, that weight gain can scare the crap out of them, and all of a sudden they want to start using again so that they stop gaining the weight. But the good news is, in time, your body will return to normal, your metabolism will return to normal, and your sleep patterns will return to normal. Anxiety, depression. What's funny is, after a period of time, that desire to sleep can become a desire to sleep, but with the lack of ability to sleep, and that can get very frustrating because you're tired, you're exhausted, you want to sleep, but now you have insomnia and you cannot sleep. So those are the physical symptoms of withdrawal from methamphetamine. Thankfully, are not very severe, but that psychological withdrawal that can last a very long time is something that you probably want to talk to a counselor about and have a good support system, because I've talked about my sister before, and I remember it wasn't that long ago that she was on what seemed to be a very good regimen of medication to control her bipolar disorder, but she was convinced that this drug cocktail was making her a zombie, was the term that she used. When
that'll happen.
All of us around her, she was her normal self. She was having fun. She was enjoying herself. We were enjoying her. She wasn't manic like she could be, and she wasn't in a big dark hole like she could be. She was right along that middle line, and everything seemed great. But to her, she felt like a zombie. And so this has happened time and time again, where she would convince herself that the drugs were making her a zombie, so she would want to get off the drugs, and then the roller coaster would start up again. So expect...
I would definitely have to disagree with you there, Mike, insofar as she's not convincing herself that it's making her a zombie. It really is, because in her mind, to herself, that is her reality. She needs no convincing of that. She hasn't done that to herself. She's not lying to herself or anything else. That is what is real to you. And in other words, there's like no denying it. You couldn't convince someone of it otherwise, if you tried to. Think of it like talking to an addict who can't see the problem. It's the exact same thing. It's not that they've convinced themselves. It's absolutely real.
And I appreciate you making the distinction, because you're absolutely right. I wasn't trying to imply that this was self-inflicted and that it was her being foolish. You're absolutely right. This is what she believed was real. And even though everybody around her would disagree with her and tell her that, no, this is you, this is the you that we love, this is the you that we know and grew up with and enjoy spending time with, there was probably nothing that we could do to talk her out of it, because, like you said, this wasn't something that she had talked herself into. This was her reality. very good point. So the good news about methamphetamine is that it's something that people do frequently come off of and can stay off of as long as they are aware of these symptoms, the length of time that it can take to feel normal again, and having a good support system there, a good recovery system, whatever you choose as that recovery system that works for you. So that's methamphetamine. Any last thoughts on meth, gentlemen?
The weird thing is, it almost doesn't sound nearly as awful, judging by if you knew what was coming, if you were quitting it, if you knew it was coming, you had that support system in place. It doesn't sound as really intimidating in order to quit as really we've been shown in the media and everything.
And that's a really good point, and I want to hit on that with our next topic, or our next drug, because that's a really important point, and it wasn't mentioned so much in the meth conversation, but it was mentioned in the cocaine and crack cocaine conversation.
So I have a question about that. Why is cocaine not considered part of the methamphetamine when it's most of it is cut with speed?
It's a good question.
I have never done pure coke. Everything that I've ever done that was called coke was probably about 90 to 95% speed of some kind.
Really?
With a little bit of coke to make your nose numb. I have one friend. In fact, you met him, Marco. He's from Colombia. He came here when he was 12. Got into music. He's a big, metal fan, and he's got his bass, and he's, plays bass guitar in metal bands. And then when he was in his 20s, he had the opportunity to go back to Peru. No, it wasn't Peru. It wasn't Colombia. No, he is from Peru, I think. Anyway, he had the opportunity to go back to Peru and get hook up with some people that he knew when he was a kid, and they had coke, and he did a line of coke.
Cocaína.
And they told him, no, you don't do. That's not how we do coke here. And he had been doing the lines of coke, the rock star, big snort. And they said no. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I got this. I do this all the time. And he did a big line of coke, and it was like, he was lucky he didn't have a heart attack.
Sure.
Because what they do is like a teeny tiny little bitty key bump,
mm-hmm.
and then you're like for the day.
That's not Spanish.
That was real coke.
Got it. Well,
now it's not considered a speed, but it's very speedy.
And the distinction, I'm sure, with the information that I was reading is based on the drug itself. If you find yourself with stepped-on drugs, these symptoms, these withdrawal symptoms, these feelings could be different, and they might be different simply because you're doing a drug that is not pure. So keep that in mind. Be aware of that, because Robinson makes a good point. But so we'll start our conversation about cocaine and crack cocaine, because believe it or not, they are the same drug. And what I don't understand is why, as a country, we treat powder cocaine and crack cocaine in terms of our justice system. We treat the two very differently. If you are a middle-class white person caught with a personal stash of powder cocaine, you might get busted for DUI. You might spend the night in jail. But if you are an African-American person who gets caught with a personal stash of crack cocaine, you're probably going to prison. And it gets prosecuted way harder with much harsher punishments for crack cocaine than for powder cocaine. And there's an entire movement out there right now trying to solve for this problem because it is completely unfair and ridiculous that powder cocaine and crack cocaine are prosecuted differently in our judicial system. The effects are the same, however, they're different in terms of the intensity and the length of time in which the effects last. So when you inject powder cocaine, obviously it's not powder when you inject it because that would be very silly, or you snort powder cocaine, the effects usually last anywhere in the vicinity of about 6 hours. When you smoke it, it can last a lot longer, like up to 8 or 12 hours. And the effects are more intense. But the effects themselves are the same. The effects tend to be, honestly, with cocaine, not particularly dramatic. You get a sort of intense feeling of energy. You want to maintain focus on something. Inhibitions go by the wayside. There can be some negative effects to cocaine. People can get very aggressive. People can get very paranoid because those inhibitions go away. Some people can become foolish and make bad decisions or pick fights that they wouldn't normally do. So I don't know. I don't fully understand the allure of cocaine, but I guess for somebody that's gonna, get on stage and perform a show for 2 hours, taking some cocaine before you get up there and start shredding on your guitar, I guess it gives you that bump without the speed effects that keep you up for 3 days. But when you come off of cocaine, and another thing about cocaine is that an overdose of cocaine is rarely fatal. Your heart rate can go up significantly, and in a very, very rare and intense cases, somebody who accidentally takes an extraordinary amount of, like Robinson mentioned earlier, very pure cocaine, and maybe you already have some sort of cardiovascular issue, that intensity and that changing of your vital signs could lead to heart attack in an overdose type situation, but typically a cocaine overdose does not result in hospitalization or any physical, long-term physical damage to your body. So people that abuse cocaine and crack cocaine, what we were talking about a minute ago that I said I wanted to talk about during this conversation was one of the trickiest parts about cocaine abuse and crack cocaine abuse is that because the withdrawal symptoms tend to be short-lived, pretty mild, and they're rarely dangerous, a lot of cocaine users will convince themselves that they're not addicted. Oh, I can't be addicted because physiologically this hasn't kicked my ass the way that alcohol, opioids, or other drugs can really feel like they're kicking your ass when you get off of them after a long period of time. And relapse can be pretty high with cocaine abusers because, and I think of somebody like Robert Downey Jr. who struggled over and over and over again with cocaine. Was you can very quickly and easily convince yourself that you didn't really have a problem because of how easy it was to stop. So you start again. And because it's not inherently dangerous, You don't have those.
Take a look at Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen, Robert Downey Jr. Where it starts getting dangerous are the people that are mixing cocaine and opioids, specifically like speedballs, cocaine, and heroin, where now you end up knowing that your body can take a lot of cocaine without a negative side effect, so you end up taking too much heroin at the same time, and then you go into respiratory arrest, and
The
you stop
problem is
breathing
that
and
you don't have the opportunity to feel as much of the heroin, and the heroin has a slower come down
much slower.
when you're mixing them together, and you can just OD without even knowing that you're ODing.
Yep.
'Cause
So
you don't
all of a
fall
sudden,
asleep. Yeah.
the cocaine wears off, so you're ready for another speedball. The cocaine's gone, the heroin's not gone out of your system, so you take another full dose, and now you're dead stuff. So cocaine, short-lived, rarely dangerous withdrawals. Also, depression, anxiety, chills, the inability to feel pleasure again. There's a dopamine consideration here with cocaine. And, I thought this was funny. I wrote it down. The intense desire to use cocaine was written as one of the withdrawal symptoms of cocaine use. Coming off of cocaine gives you the intense desire to use cocaine. I'm like, wow.
Yes, I knew some young girls who were getting addicted to cocaine and wanted it so bad that they would just end up doing ridiculous sexual acts with their dealer just so they could get high.
Yeah.
And that's just really sad. And one of the other side effects that you didn't mention was that if you're snorting it, it will fuck the shit out of your nose.
Oh yeah.
It'll burn out all of your nose sensors and your tissue, and because it's a crystal and it's cutting into your tissue. Your sinuses are going to crash.
Your mucous
and that doesn't
membrane.
come back.
Yeah.
You can burn a hole through your your cartilage away. You can burn your cartilage away.
Crazy.
And I don't really like doing snorting cocaine because I just feel like I've got a cold the next day.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily from the coke. I think it's more from the crap they put in it.
Agreed.
But,
a very common cutting agent used in cocaine over the last 20 years or so are laxatives. They mix
baby laxative and
baby
powder.
laxatives. They mix the cocaine with the powder form of baby laxative that they put in formula or something like that. And so a lot of people experience this immediate need to use the bathroom when they use cocaine. And so when people come off of a long-term using of cocaine, powder cocaine typically, they'll get constipated too, when that can just be uncomfortable and frustrating and nasty as well. Because a lot of people think cocaine as...
Consider that any...
Go ahead. What were you saying, Robinson? Maybe he's frozen. So... not hearing you.
Something's wrong. Okay. Any kind of a stimulant, like a cup, you feel like you have to poop. It's not just the laxative.
Well, and I agree. Anybody
I
who's
remember
ever...
people thinking that they had... People think they have bad coke when they do a line and feel like they have to poop because they think it's the laxative, but it's actually just a natural side effect.
Right. It's just like coffee. So, a big one...
But
what? We're kind of... I think we're only...
I was wondering if you were going to... Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to tell the story about you and my cat.
Yeah, so I was, and that was contemplating whether or not I would tell that story as well. But so Robinson had a lovely cat named Sooner, and Sooner was not the most affectionate cat in the world. Sooner liked to hang out up high somewhere observing the room and wasn't a big fan of being petted or held or snuggled or anything like that. But there was a period of time when I was kind of getting my ass kicked in general, working, going to school, working more, going to more school. Had a pretty tough schedule, always busy. And I had made the foolish decision that using cocaine, I had a hookup for cocaine that was very cheap and almost endless. And I never got much from using cocaine. It never did much for me. I never felt much from it. But it definitely, number one, helped me stay awake when I was tired. Number two, if I ever drank too much.
When you're studying.
Right. But what if I ever drank too much, I could very easily level myself out and not feel drunk anymore by using some cocaine. And so there came a point where, because it was so readily available, I was just doing a shit ton of cocaine for no reason. And it was always powder cocaine. It was always snorted, no big deal. But I realized that because I wasn't feeling anything like I would feel from using, opioid drugs, which is a very intense feeling, I would just do more and more and more and more and more to try to feel the effects of something. Because just the little bump, the little spike of energy, wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted something more, but I wasn't familiar enough with the situation to know that I wasn't going to get that from the coke.
Right. If you're looking for an altered state, cocaine is not your drug of choice.
Right, and that's definitely what I was looking for. So I remember, though, one night we were living in Oakland, and I had spent the evening just doing an extraordinary amount of cocaine. And apparently I had just done too much. And like I said, it is very rare that a cocaine overdose is dangerous, but you can definitely do too much to the point where you kind of start freaking out a little bit. And looking back now, the story is kind of funny, but at the time it was really scary, because I remember sitting downstairs and it was dark, but we had a lot of gadgets and electronics and VCRs and DVD players and televisions and stereos that had a lot of little lights on them. And I remember, and it was probably, I didn't realize until much later in my life that I would occasionally have anxiety attacks. I always thought, I never knew what they were, but I even remember being really young and experiencing these anxiety attacks. So it might have been a mixture of two things, but I remember very vividly, after an evening of just abusing the shit out of this drug,
which naturally makes you anxious.
Very anxious. That the anxiety side of it, the paranoia side of it. I remember maybe a few weeks earlier or a couple months earlier, it was the same kind of thing where there was a police car. This is a different story, but there was a police car that had pulled up outside of our apartment for no reason other than, we lived in Oakland. But a police car pulled up outside, and everybody downstairs was partaking and, drinking and doing some cocaine or whatever. But I saw this police car out the peephole, or the crack in the door, and I freaked the fuck out. And I was convinced that we were all going to jail. That we were the cops were sitting out there because they were waiting for backup, and they were going to storm into the apartment. They were going to knock down the door. They were going to put us all in handcuffs, and they were going to take us to prison. So I didn't say anything to anybody and just bailed. I left. I went upstairs, and I hid until the sun came up in the kitchen, trying to sober myself up so that everybody else could go to prison, but I wasn't going to go to prison, goddammit. And I should have probably realized that me and Coke didn't mix after that situation, but I didn't. So fast forward to the new apartment, and the second ill-advised evening of heavy drug use, and I took too much, and I'm sitting downstairs in the dark amongst all of these gadgets with lights and stuff on them, and all of a sudden, every time I would turn my head, these lights would like slowly streak and strobe out of my vision. And so I thought something was really, really wrong. I don't know what I thought was wrong, but something was really wrong. The lights should not be doing this. And when I would close my eyes, I would still see these lights. And so the only thing that I could do to pacify myself, to try and keep myself from having a full-blown like nervous breakdown, was to cling to this cat sooner. Like holding the cat in my arms, laying down on the futon mattress bed thing downstairs for, I couldn't even tell you how long this went on for. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours, I don't know. But I remember just clinging on to Sooner. She was the only thing like keeping me in this world, is what I felt. And as long as Suni was there, and as long as I could hold this cat, I would be okay. And after that night, I swore that shit off forever and never ever touched it again, because it was the worst experience of my life.
If I recall, I believe you had to go as far as to Google.
Yeah.
Search cocaine overdose.
Yep.
To realize that what you were experiencing was in fact an overdose.
Absolutely. And that's when I said.
By the way, I want to give a quick plug to a site, a website, since we're on this particular topic about what to expect. There's a site called Erowid, EROWID, Erowid.com, and it is a really good site for reading other people's experiences on what they've done, what they've mixed, how much they've mixed, how often they took it, how long they took it, and it's almost to the point where it's like these are like scientific experiments. You don't have to experience drugs to see what's going to happen. You can just go to Erowid and read other people's blogs and stories, and you'll know exactly what to expect. Of course, everyone's chemistry is different, and there's many variables, but you'll get a really good idea.
I've been to that site many times. It's fantastic. So, for the sake of time, let's move on to alcohol.
Okay.
Alcohol is a tricky one, because people that abuse alcohol can abuse alcohol for decades. And your body is an incredible thing. The way that your body can adjust to the alcohol content in your blood that is there consistently. So your entire body chemistry can change to try to make up for the amount of alcohol that you're consuming on a daily basis. So, which is why they tell you that detoxing from alcohol can be the most dangerous abused substance to get off of. Because your body has gotten so used to the alcohol in your blood that if you just quit cold turkey, it used to be that for severe cases of alcoholism, quitting cold turkey, they had, if you got to the point where you were experiencing something called delirium tremens, or DTs, that up until about 40 or 50 years ago, 35% of people who were using enough alcohol to get to the point of experiencing DTs, 35% of them would die.
Wow.
What?
That's
Yeah.
that's a very high percentage.
That's insane.
Died.
And even now in 2015, if you are a bad enough alcoholic that you go into true delirium tremens, we'll get into what that means, it is still a mortality rate of 10%. Mostly because people are quitting alcohol and they're not being supervised by a doctor. So if you are a severe alcoholic, we're talking hard liquor, like a liter every couple of days hard liquor drinker, and you are planning to quit drinking, get a professional involved. That's my PSA for the night. So
that's very good advice.
Yeah, alcohol withdrawals can start in as little as 2 hours after your last drink. Typically, they start around 5 or 10 hours after your last drink, but for severe cases, as little as 2 hours go by since your last drink when you start feeling the effects of alcohol withdrawals. Alcohol withdrawals can last for days, or in some cases even weeks, and typically involve anxiety, depression, sweats, the lack of willingness to do anything or be motivated by anything, the extreme fear that something bad is about to happen to you, changes in your vital signs, so increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, or what's strange is even decreased heart rate and decreased blood pressure, depending on your body chemistry. So I mentioned it, but a big troublesome part of alcohol withdrawal is something known as delirium tremens, DTs. And a lot of people in AA, a lot of alcoholics, they'll talk about DTs and they'll use it very casually. And they think that because shaking and convulsions are kind of a pretty typical part of alcohol withdrawal, anybody who experiences any sort of convulsive shaking or anything after they've quit alcohol, they think that that is delirium tremens, but that's not necessarily the case. That is a symptom of, but with true delirium tremens, we're talking intense convulsions, sometimes seizures. Your vitals can go out of control to the point where you could have a heart attack or a stroke, or your heart can basically stop altogether. Those are the times where it's dangerous. Intense hallucinations, the feeling of bugs on your skin, not just skin crawling, but the actual feeling and hallucination that there are bugs on your skin. Fleas or ants or something like that.
Or under your skin.
Or right, under your skin as well. And then this was weird, but you know that you're in the midst of a DT's problem. A lot of people claim that they hallucinate seeing what appeared to be mice or rats or snakes crawling around on the floor. and extreme confusion. DTs come on typically within 72 hours, so if you don't have any symptoms within 72 hours, you're probably fine and you're out of the woods. But again, having a doctor involved if you are a heavy, heavy drinker and you are making that decision to get clean and sober, going to a professional detox facility or at least getting your doctor involved in this decision. Some people, they can't just quit alcohol cold turkey, and they have to actually wean themselves down. And that can be very, very difficult to do. But alcohol is probably the second most violent withdrawal out of any of the substance abuse categories that we could possibly talk about.
First being heroin?
The first being the last one that we're going to talk about, and that would be, opioids. And we're going to talk about that one, because that one's the son of a bitch. Now, another very popular drug that people abuse, it's less of an abused substance, and it's one that I have absolutely no experience with. And maybe either one of you guys do, and you could shed a little light on this, but commonly referred to as ecstasy, or more commonly referred to nowadays as Molly, but the substance known as MDMA. Now, I've personally never taken ecstasy. I think more so because a very, very close family friend of mine died from an MDMA overdose and subsequent dumping of his body on the streets of Seattle after a bad experience at a nightclub, and the nightclub owner not wanting somebody to ruin the party for everybody else, so they literally had one of the club employees take him, claiming that he was going to be taken to the hospital, but instead of him being taken to the hospital, they took him a few blocks down the road in downtown Seattle and dumped his overdosing body on the side of the road in the fucking gutter. So I've stayed away from the MDMA scene, and for my own personal reasons. But the thing about MDMA is that it depletes the serotonin levels in the brain. And most people don't abuse ecstasy because it's not really something that you're going to function completely normally while you're on. So if you have a regular life, you're not going to use it every day. But there are definitely people that abuse it and use it every day. And because of that depletion of serotonin, even if you just take one dose, you go out to a party or a club or a rave and you take one, typically it's 80 to 160 milligrams that you're taking, it can take days for your body and your brain to recover just from one dose. And obviously the higher the dose and the higher the frequency of use, the harder it's going to be for your body to recover and re-up the serotonin that you've depleted. And so depending on how much you use and how often you use it will determine how long the withdrawal symptoms will last. I don't want to put any of you on the spot, but Robinson, you're typically the one that talks about this kind of stuff more openly. Do you have experience with MDMA?
Absolutely. MDA, there's MDA, and MDMA.
I don't know.
Originally, it was MDA was the original compound, and it was prescribed by marriage counselors to couples that weren't in love anymore, and it simulates a sense of limerence. Limerence is the word that we call the feeling of being in love. And whether you're depressed or not, if you take it, you won't be depressed during making all of your serotonin that your body has produced for the day flood through your system, and now you're just so fucking happy and ecstatic, and you love everybody, and you love to be touched and cuddled, and you want to have lots of sex, and you just it's great if you want to go to an orgy. It was very popular in the 80s and 90s all over the world, and it should not be confused with ecstasy. Ecstasy is a homemade pill that has MDMA in it.
Yeah.
And there's so many different varieties of what else is in it that you don't know what you're getting if you don't know the system. There's little different colors with little different stamps, and you just don't know. Sometimes it's just a tiny little blue pill with no markings on it. A friend of mine came back from Burning Man, and somebody had lost or given him a baggie full of little blue pills and said, I don't know what this is, but, and I said, oh, that looks like my Adderall.
Huh.
So, I just threw it on my desk. And one day when I ran out of Adderall, I said, oh, I got these over here. And I took one, and Chloe and I went to a movie. And by the time we got to the movie, and
she was pregnant.
No, but by the time we got to the movie, I didn't take it before I left. I had it. I had put some in my little pill box, and I started to have a narcoleptic episode as we were getting to the theater. So I took one of these pills because I didn't want to fall asleep in the movie. I'd just take an Adderall and I'll be awake. By the time the film started, the drug kicked in, and I couldn't stop giggling. I had to leave the theater. So we got our tickets refunded, and I went home and crawled up into bed and giggled and talked on Facebook for the rest of the night.
Wow.
And it feels really good. And for some people, there's a come down. If you have any kind of bipolar disorder, then yes, there's going to be some come down on it. But if you're normal and your body's in pretty healthy shape, you'll come back pretty quickly. I think it also disrupts. There's what is it? Serotonin, norepinephrine. What is it?
Norepinephrine, GABA, and dopamine.
Dopamine and melatonin. Those are the four things that are all basically making you happy and sad and sleepy and awake. And MDMA it throws all of those off balance in the long run because you are messing with one, which just automatically messes up the rest. And if you are experiencing an imbalance from that, take some plant-based tryptophan, because tryptophan is the main thing that all those things are made from. Your body converts tryptamine into.
Very smart man. I read that on my fancy research project.
Yes.
Tryptophan. So, common withdrawal symptoms from MDMA: anxiety, confusion, mood swings, insomnia, and in more severe cases, memory loss, depersonalization, which I thought was interesting, where you do not feel like yourself, but in a very extreme sort of way, where
I get that naturally.
it's like, who am I? And
It's being stuck in your body.
schizophrenia-like delusions. So delusions to the point of schizophrenia-like
Your God.
Yeah. So that and one that I thought was weird, muscle rigidity. So if you're withdrawing from MDMA, your muscles can seize up on you. And I don't know that they meant like your diaphragm to the point where you can't breathe properly, but more like your extremities. And you find it hard to move your legs and your arms and your neck and your shoulders, and you can be very uncomfortable. And believe it or not, similar to the cocaine withdrawals and the alcohol withdrawals, that weird hallucination and the bugs under the skin feeling. And typically the lasts a few days up to a couple of weeks for the withdrawal symptoms from MDMA. And that's long-term use typically. Or, like Robinson and Chaz were saying, for people that are already predisposed to chemical imbalance issues, this particular drug can throw that off pretty hardcore, and so you may experience a deeper level of these withdrawal symptoms, the depression, the anxiety, if you were already experiencing some chemical imbalances of the brain.
Yep.
So at this point, I don't even see a point in having a music break unless you guys need to take a $5.
No, but I read something interesting about speed, which I wanted to bring up with there's when you see people who do a lot of meth, especially guys, but women too, you'll find that they're very muscular but skinny and wiry, very wiry. And what I read was that when you do crystal meth, it sends a signal that sends a signal to your muscles, basically, that you've just had a workout because of calcium. Calcium ends up showing up in the bloodstream as a side effect, and that calcium in the bloodstream tells your muscles that you've just had a workout, and now it's time to rebuild those muscles. And since there's no protein to rebuild the muscles, they just get stronger and smaller, and you end up with these wiry guys. So that's why that happens.
Very
Calcium.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Chaz, before we move on to the final substance of the evening?
No thoughts. Go ahead.
All right.
You mean the afternoon for me?
Right. What time is it there?
It is 3:38 p.m. on Sunday.
Sunday at 3:38 p.m. Where right now it is 1:38 a.m. also on Sunday.
Yes.
So this one is near and dear to my heart. When I stopped drinking, I didn't experience any severe withdrawal symptoms from alcohol. But opioids, heroin, Percocet, Oxy, codeine, Vicodin, hydrocodone, oxycodone, OxyContin. A lot of people call it Oxycontin, but it is not that. That is an ignorant way of saying OxyContin. But it is easier to say, so I forgive you.
It's obnoxious.
It is. It is. It's like when people say especially. It drives me crazy.
Effing hate that.
Right? Isn't that just like...
Sorry. There's someone who says that all the time. And,
it's like there's no X in it. Like, give me a break.
Or else.
There's another
no
one.
T in else. There's no T in else.
People from Texas, instead of saying, when I went to the store, They say whenever I went to the store. That one drives me crazy. There are a few others. I can't think of them off the top of my head.
Yeah, I hate those. Sorry.
All right.
Continue.
So this is the big one. We know that prescription pain medication is like the blight of the last couple of generations. It kills more people. It is abused more often. And from prescription pain medication, the jump from the $30 or $40 80 milligram oxy pill on the street to the $10 hit of heroin is a very easy jump to make. Heroin gets vilified as the worst drug ever, when in reality, morphine and hydromorphone, very, 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 very commonly used drugs in hospitals for pain, is just a synthetic heroin. And in this country, especially on the West Coast, black tar heroin, a very stepped on, very icky, very dirty heroin, is widely available and cheap, cheap, cheap. And it is incredibly intoxicating. And the love affair that people have with these opioids is intense and consistent and very difficult to get away from. What'll happen is, as you build a tolerance and your body becomes less aware of the aches and pains of life. Because let's face it, sitting down for a long period of time can be painful to your muscles, to your bones, to your joints. So if you're taking large amounts of pain medication, when you stop taking that pain medication and your opiate receptors are starting to open up and your body is now feeling these little tiny painful things that everybody experiences, it is amplified because opioids naturally dehydrate you. They soak up your skin's ability to create oils. The reason that you get constipated, the reason you can't urinate when you are high on opioids is the reason that you cannot pee, the reason you cannot poo. And so all of a sudden, when you're not taking this shit anymore, you lose your bowels, you have diarrhea, you have cramping of the stomach, you vomit, you sweat, your nose is running, you feel oily everywhere, so you break out in acne and pimples, and you feel those little aches and those little pains that you hadn't felt for so long, on top of the insomnia and the amplification of basically everything around you, where if you're hot, you feel too hot, but then because you sweat and your body's naturally trying to cool you down, you then feel freezing cold. You go into this state of, I wouldn't say convulsions, because it's not some shaking uncontrollably, but it's you trying to you clench basically to just kind of squeeze down on yourself because everything aches and everything hurts. You can try to lie down to spread the pain across yourself in a more even way, but then you're tossing and you're turning and you're laying on the floor for 3 minutes, and then you're on the bed for 5 minutes, and then you're standing up and walking around for 10 minutes, and then you want to curl up into a ball in the corner of the room and just make the shit stop. And the worst part is that you know all it would take to make the shit stop is that one little pill. Even just half of that one little pill. Or to call your dealer and instead of $20 worth of junk, I just want $10 worth of junk. I just want to feel better. And everything that I just described is what a heroin junkie refers to as getting sick. That's the terminology that gets used. I need a hookup because I don't want to get sick. They don't mean sick like having a cold. They mean
or being nauseous.
Right. They mean the withdrawals will come and they start slowly and they intensify and intensify and intensify to the point where if you watch a movie like Trainspotting or you watch a movie like Requiem for a Dream, the desperation that you feel because you know how easily you could make this stop is enough to push people over the edge and just give up entirely. The problem is, if you have the courage to quit using opioids, if you've kicked cold turkey, heroin or oxy or heavy usage of any of these drugs, and you've gone through those withdrawals and come out on the other side clean, if you ever make the decision to start using again, you will, I can almost guarantee that you will never be willing to put yourself through that ever again. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to quit because you know what's coming. And because you know what's coming, the fear takes over and you cannot bring yourself to do it. Now, there are professional detox facilities, there are medications, Suboxone, methadone, some of the really, really expensive, $10,000 to $15,000 detox facilities where they will literally they will hook you up to an IV, they will sedate you, or in some cases, completely put you out to get your body through this process. And then when you
14
wake
days?
up, yeah, it's like literally 7 to 14 days. And when you wake up, if you have the money and you wake up, you didn't have to experience any of it. And you're still going to feel, because withdrawal symptoms can last for months, you're still not going to feel great, but you're going to get through the hard part under anesthesia and you're going to feel fine. But most people can't afford $10,000 or $15,000 to do this. So most of our listeners, most of the people that we're talking to right now, they're if they're going through this or they're going to have to go through this, they're going to have to go through it. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. But what I hope that I can do, because I kid you not, the penultimate episode of Mr. Robot on USA, a television show that's currently running on the USA Network, fantastic TV show, depicted a guy going through morphine withdrawals. I already mentioned Train Spotting, Requiem for a Dream, even something as silly as Talladega Nights, the Ricky Bobby story, where he's going through heroin withdrawals, and he's in the hospital room or in wherever he was, and he's shouting and screaming. He's like, "I'm hot and I'm cold at the same time." The depictions look intense, and they look almost ridiculous and dramatic and ridiculous, but especially this Mr. Robot episode from 2 weeks ago and Requiem for a Dream are very, very accurate. So I beg you, if you, listening right now, have been through and kicked heroin or opioids, do not go back. Do not start using again. Because I'm telling you right now, it would take an act of God for you to be willing to put yourself through that process again. It is awful. And it is probably...
Unless you suddenly made so much money. Unless you've made so much money that you can get that treatment.
Exactly.
But even still, it's just not worth it.
It is not worth it. And there are people who think that they have a strategy in place, that if they only use for no more than 14 days, that they're not going to become physically dependent. And that may be true for a first-time user, but for somebody who got off of it and is getting back on it, that is absolutely false.
All it takes is one use.
One time. And then you start to feel those withdrawals, and you will use again. Because your brain and your body convince you that it's going to be just as bad as the first time, and so fuck that. I'm not
staying
going
high,
to.
yeah.
I'm staying high until I die.
The rule that I first heard back in the 80s when I knew people that were doing heroin was never use it more than 3 days in a row. That was the rule. So anytime I've ever done it, I've never done it more than 1 day. I'll wait a month before I'll do it again. And the same rule applies for MDMA. Use it. If you're going to go to a party, use it. Wait 3 weeks before you touch it again.
For the same reason?
Yeah. You have to, because it takes that long for your body to get back into shape. 3 weeks. And if you continue to use it, you will eventually have Parkinson's disease.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
MDMA, the main side effect of long-term MDMA continued use is Parkinson's disease.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
So think about that next time you're getting high. Twice.
So, it's funny, because the addict in me hears these stories, and I watch these movies and these depictions of people using and boozing, and I hear about people's stories that they tell about, like my story about the road trip in California, or your story about going to the movies and accidentally, taking your ecstasy pill. And the addict in me gets excited, is turned on by that, right? How where even all these years later, I hear these stories, and I'm taken to a place in my mind where it's like, oh, that's sexy. That's something that was a part of my life that I enjoyed and whatever. And even though these were some of the most destructive and tumultuous times in my life, the addict brain will start to try to convince you otherwise. And I don't know, Chaz, if there were times in your life before you and your doctors found the right balance of medication for you, if there were times in your life pre-medication where you remember being super productive, or they were just sexy times in your life where you had good shit going on, and things were going well here or there, whatever, are there ever things or times that bring you back to thinking that was a better time, and that maybe getting off of whatever medication that you use to keep you balanced would be a good idea? Do you ever have those thoughts?
Never. There's
Never.
nothing before that I'd want to go back to.
Got it.
All those sexy, productive times and everything else, that's come after treatment. That's come after we've got everything we have. The 15 years, how far we've come, that all happened after it. There was nothing before that was like that at all that you described. There was nothing worth going back to. And I guess that, despite all the shit that I've gotten, that I've been through, after listening to all this, and doing so many of these different shows, I am so damn lucky and thankful that I never had to go through, what all these brave men and women, including yourself, Mike, and Robinson, I know your wisdom comes from it too, this addiction stuff. I am just so fortunate that I never had to deal with that. So, yeah.
Amen. And we tell these stories not to scare. We certainly don't tell these stories to, what's the word I'm looking, glorify the use of drugs or the abuse of alcohol. We tell these stories because when we started this show, the description of the show is a real life conversation about drugs and addiction and recovery. And part of recovery is the drug using side of things. If you are listening and you are an addict in recovery, or you are an addict who's still using, your using has to be a significant part of your recovery, because it is a significant part of who you are. And in order for you to be able to get to where you want to be and who you want to be, you can't ignore the you from the past. I can't ignore who I was and what I did. And sure, I'll be the first to admit, there were a lot of great, fun, exciting, sexy times when I was out there using and drinking and all that stuff. I had those fun and exciting times with Robinson. I had those fun and exciting times with you, Chaz.
Mm-hmm.
I had those fun and exciting times with the woman in my life who would slam the door in my face if I made the decision to go back to those times in my life, no matter how much fun or how much excitement there might have been at certain points in time while I was using, while I was drinking. It does not, the fun, the excitement, the sexiness does not and cannot outweigh the destruction and the negativity and the fallout that was created in the long term of that behavior. And I think that might be why you feel the way that you feel, and that maintaining yourself the way you are is important to you, Chaz.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, Bickety Band, our show is over. So over to the point that on Radio Valencia, we have probably been cut off. And we're going to start the bumper music for the podcast and for the webcast, because I'm sure they've cut us off by now. Radio Rampage or Rampage Radio came on and said, these guys won't shut the fuck up. It was a very good conversation, and I'm glad that all three of us were on the show the whole time to talk about it.
Yes.
And thank you.
This was an
Thank
amazing
you.
episode as far as technical difficulties go. We had no fourth guest.
Holy
fourth host.
shit.
Yes, that's good.
And from Vietnam. That's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Good hotel, good Wi-Fi.
Right. For $15 a night, best hotel in Vietnam.
Wow.
I'd love to see what you could get for $50 a night. Woo! 4 seasons, baby. All right. Well, you've been listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast live on Radio Valencia and YouTube. You can catch the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, like us on Facebook, shoot us a tweet on Twitter, shoot us an email, soberhappyhour@gmail.com. We will be back next week, next Saturday night, Sunday morning, midnight Pacific time until 2:02 a.m. when we get cut off from Radio Valencia 2. But the YouTube is here, and the podcast can go as long as we want it to. So, for Chaz and Robinson, I am your host. Thank you so much for listening. And if you or yours is considering getting sober, I highly recommend it. Something like that. I said like recommend. I don't even know what that means. It's Vietnamese. That's what it is.
Just God.
We're just done. Good night. See you next week.
Good night.